Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going deep, diving into something kind of fascinating, but, a little bit creepy too.
Oh, yeah.
Dark psychology.
Oh,
That whole thing about how people use, well, manipulative tactics, to get what they want.
right.
We've got some pretty interesting research lined up for this one.
Cool.
And I guess our mission here is to figure out what exactly is dark psychology.
Yeah,
Why do people even do this manipulation thing?
right.
And I guess most importantly, how can we spot it?
Yeah.
How can we protect ourselves from falling into that trap?
Oh, that's a great question. It is a little unsettling when you really start thinking about it.
Yeah.
But, it can be incredibly valuable to kind of peek into this darker side of how we are as people,
Absolutely. And I think that's why we're all so fascinated by it, right? So let's start with the basics.
Right.
What exactly are we even talking about when we say dark psychology?
Well, I guess the easiest way to put it is it's basically a field that looks at, well, how people use psychology, psychological principles, but for manipulative purposes.
Hmm.
It's about how people use what they know about, well, how humans behave to influence other people,
Right.
to control them,
Yeah.
even exploit them sometimes.
So it's like psychology, but with a kind of a bad intention behind it.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
Like traditional psychology, right?
Mm.
That's all about helping people
Right.
to understand how their minds work,
Yeah.
to improve their well-being,
Yeah.
build good relationships, grow as a person.
Right. Healthy stuff.
Exactly. But dark psychology, that's like flipping it,
Yeah.
like looking at how those same principles that we use for good
Hmm.
can be, well, I guess, twisted,
Yeah.
to get power over other people.
Right.
Often, well, not really caring about, if it's ethical or not.
Right. So we're not talking about like, going to therapy and trying to better yourself.
No, no.
We're talking about like intentionally using these psychological techniques for your own gain, often at the expense of others.
Yeah, that's it. That's dark psychology.
Wow, that is some heavy stuff.
It is.
But before we get into the nitty-gritty of how people actually do this, I'm kind of curious about the why.
Yeah.
What would drive someone to use these tactics in the first place?
I mean, it's a big question, and there's no easy answer.
Right.
But we can, kind of break down some of the most common reasons, the motivations behind it.
Okay.
One of the biggest ones, the need for power and control.
Mm.
Some people, they just have this deep, deep need to dominate, to be the top dog, to feel like they're in charge.
Like that boss, that micromanaging boss, that has to control every single detail of every project.
Oh, yeah, exactly. They just got to bend everybody to their will.
Right.
And often, they leave a trail of, well, hurt feelings and emotional damage along the way.
Wow. Yeah.
But power and control, that's just one piece of it.
Okay, so what are some other reasons that someone might turn to this manipulation stuff?
Well, there's self-interest and egotism.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of manipulators, they have this, well, it's almost like a sense of entitlement, right? Their needs are the only ones that matter.
Oh, like that friend who always has to be the center of attention?
Exactly.
Or that coworker who, steals credit for ideas that weren't even theirs.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic.
It's all about them.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes from narcissism,
Mm,
where someone just thinks they're more important than everybody else.
right.
They use people to feed their ego.
So they manipulate as a way to kind of boost themselves up.
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
But, got to remember, not all manipulators are like evil masterminds.
Right.
Sometimes it comes from a place of insecurity, even fear.
Can you explain that a little bit? How can insecurity lead to manipulation?
Well, imagine you've got a coworker, right? And they're constantly like shooting down other people's ideas,
Right.
putting down their accomplishments.
Yeah.
At first you might think, oh, they're just power hungry, or, they're just trying to sabotage everybody.
Yeah.
But sometimes it comes from their own fear, like a deep fear of looking incompetent.
Mm.
So they manipulate to try to feel safe, to feel in control, even if it means making other people feel bad.
That's interesting. Yeah.
It kind of flips the script a little.
Yeah.
It's not always about being a bad person. Sometimes it's about trying to cope with your own struggles.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And we also have to think about how people learn these things.
Okay.
Learn behaviors and social influences.
So someone could actually learn how to be manipulative just by watching other people.
Exactly. Like imagine growing up in a family where manipulation was just normal,
Right.
or working in this, cutthroat company where everybody's backstabbing and scheming.
Yeah.
You might start to think, well, this is just how you survive.
Oh,
And you start doing it too without even realizing it.
so it becomes your normal. It becomes how you operate.
Yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
And then, there's this whole thing about creating this facade of superiority.
Okay.
Some people manipulate to cover up their own insecurities.
Oh, so like the schoolyard bully who picks on the smaller kids to make themselves feel bigger.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or think about like that colleague who's always criticizing everybody else,
Oh, right, right.
trying to make themselves look better.
Yeah.
It's all about creating this fake image,
Wow.
hiding their weaknesses behind this mask of power and importance.
This is a lot. This has given me a lot to think about already.
I know, right?
It's amazing how many different reasons there could be for someone to manipulate, from wanting power to dealing with their own insecurities.
Yeah, it's a lot more complex than people think,
It really is.
And understanding those reasons, that's the key to figuring out how to deal with manipulative behavior, whether it's, someone else doing it or even ourselves.
Right, right.
Because all do it to some degree.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the scary part, I think. So we've talked about the why, the reasons behind manipulation, what drives people to do it. But now let's get into like the actual how,
Yeah.
the techniques that people use.
Yeah.
What are they doing to get what they want?
Well, I mean, as we talked about, it all starts with those core principles: influencing people without them realizing it,
Mm-hmm.
deception, ultimately aiming for control.
Yeah.
But let's get down to some of the tactics you might actually see, in your day-to-day life.
Right. The stuff that we should be looking out for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So one of the most common, and it's surprisingly effective, is flattery.
Hmm.
I mean, think about it. Someone's showering you with praise, compliments left and right, makes you feel good. You start to trust them, and then bam, they hit you with their agenda.
It's like they're buttering you up before they go in for the kill.
Exactly.
I mean, we all like compliments, right?
Yeah.
Why is flattery so effective in terms of manipulation?
Well, it's kind of cool, actually. When someone gives you a compliment, it triggers something in your brain.
Oh.
It's like your reward system lights up. You get this little hit of dopamine.
Mm.
Makes you feel good, not just about yourself, but about the person who's giving you the compliment.
Oh, interesting.
Creates this sense of like connection and trust.
So you let your guard down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're much more likely to just go along with what they want.
So it's not just about vanity then.
Oh,
There's actually like a biological reason why flattery works.
absolutely. And because
Okay.
it happens, kind of subconsciously,
Right.
you might not even realize you're being manipulated.
That's scary.
It is.
Okay, so flattery's one thing. What else?
Well, there's always the good old guilt trip.
Oh, man.
I'm sure you've experienced that one.
Oh, who hasn't? I mean, parents, friends,
Everyone does it.
everyone.
It's like, if you really cared about me, you would.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly.
But how does that actually work? Like, what's the psychology behind making someone feel guilty?
It plays on your sense of responsibility,
Mm,
your empathy. Manipulators, they'll use these little hints or accusations, or sometimes they just come right out and say it
right.
to make you feel bad, even if you haven't done anything wrong.
Like it's almost emotional blackmail?
It kind of is,
Yeah.
but why are we so susceptible to it? Like, why does it work? I mean, feel about it. We're social creatures, right?
Yeah.
We crave connection. We want to belong.
Right.
Guilt trips, they tap into that deep need to be in good standing with other people.
Hmm.
You don't want to disappoint people.
Right.
You don't want to hurt the people you care about.
Right.
So you're much more likely to just, give in, even if it's not really what you want to do.
Exactly.
It's about keeping the peace.
Yeah. Preserving those relationships.
So flattery, guilt trips, what other nasty tricks do these manipulators have up their sleeve?
Well, let's not forget about exploiting fear.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, these people, they're masters at figuring out what you're afraid of,
Right.
and they use it against you.
Mm.
Threats, scare tactics, they might even create this false sense of urgency
Oh, right.
to pressure you into making a decision that you wouldn't normally make.
So it's all about like playing on those deep-seated anxieties that we all have, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
But like, what are some real life examples of that?
Okay, well, think about like a salesperson,
Yeah.
right? They're trying to get you to buy something, and they say, oh, this is the last one we have,
Right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or the sale ends today.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah, exactly. They're creating this fear of missing out
Right.
to make you buy it right then and there.
Right.
Or, imagine a partner who threatens to leave if you don't do what they want.
Ooh.
They're using your fear of abandonment to control you.
Wow. Yeah.
That's pretty heavy stuff.
It is. It's like they're reading your mind and using your fears against you.
That's what makes manipulation so insidious.
Right.
It works on you without you even realizing it.
Right.
And those are just a few examples. There are tons of other tactics out there,
Hmm.
all designed to, well, to use your weaknesses to get what they want.
Okay, this is getting a little creepy.
It is.
It makes you realize how easy it is to be manipulated.
Right.
It's kind of everywhere, isn't it?
It is, which is why awareness is so important.
Okay, so how do we protect ourselves? How do we not fall into these traps?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Yeah.
And it's something we're going to talk a lot more about, but I think the first step is just being aware of it. The more you understand these tactics, how they work, why people use them, the better you'll be at spotting them in real life.
Like we're building this mental toolkit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're learning to recognize those patterns.
Right, those red flags.
Yeah.
Before we get sucked in.
Right. But remember, awareness doesn't mean becoming like paranoid,
Yeah. Yeah.
Suspicious of everyone you meet.
Right.
It's about, developing a healthy sense of skepticism,
Okay.
learning to trust your gut.
Okay, so if something feels off,
Yeah.
or if someone's behavior seems a little too good to be true,
Yeah.
it's probably a good idea to take a step back and really look at the situation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Pay attention to those little cues,
Yeah.
those patterns that might be telling you something's not quite right.
Right.
But here's something interesting to think about.
Okay.
If manipulation is so common,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
If it's everywhere,
Mm.
isn't it possible that we've all done it ourselves at some point?
You're right. If we can all be manipulated,
Right.
we must all be capable of manipulating other people.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I've used the guilt trip before.
Yeah.
Does that make me a manipulator?
That's a really good point. And it brings us to this really important idea.
Okay.
The line between healthy behavior and manipulation, it's not always so clear.
Right.
I mean, we all influence each other, right? That's part of, being human.
Right.
The difference is, what's your intention
Mm.
and what's the impact on the other person?
Okay, so how do we know the difference?
Yeah.
Like what separates, just normal persuasion from actual manipulation?
Well, there are a few things to look at.
Okay.
First, what's your motivation?
Okay.
Are you trying to hate the other person?
Right.
Or are you just thinking about yourself?
Right.
Second, is the other person aware of what you're doing?
Mm.
Or are you trying to, sneakily influence them?
Yeah.
And finally, think about the impact. Is it good for them or is it bad for them?
Okay.
And these are tricky questions. The answers aren't always black and white.
So it's not as simple as just good or bad.
No.
There are gray areas.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so can you give us some examples, to kind of illustrate the difference between healthy influence and manipulative stuff?
Sure. So let's say you're trying to get a friend to quit smoking.
Okay.
You might use, logic. You might appeal to their emotions. You might even try to persuade them a little.
Right.
But your goal is to help them.
Right. You want them to be healthier.
Yeah, you're not trying to trick them or control them.
Right. Your intentions are good.
Exactly.
But what about when someone's using manipulation, but for what seems like a good reason?
Oh,
Like a parent who, tells their kid a little white lie to protect them from something scary.
that's a great example.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do use these tactics, with good intentions.
Right.
But even then, you have to think about the long-term consequences.
Mm-hmm.
Like a white lie might seem harmless now,
Right.
but in the long run, it could damage trust.
Right.
That's why it's so important to really think about how we're acting
Hmm.
and to be honest, to have integrity in our interactions.
So even when we think we're doing the right thing,
Yeah.
we have to be careful about using manipulation,
Right.
even if we think it's for a good reason.
Yeah.
It's all about finding that balance, right?
It is.
Between, being assertive, but also respecting the other person.
Absolutely. And sometimes, the best thing to do is just be honest.
Mm.
about what you want, even if it means you don't get it.
Wow.
Sometimes that's the most ethical approach.
This is a lot to process.
I know, right?
It makes you think about your own relationships, your own actions. It's not just about spotting manipulation in other people.
No.
It's about looking at ourselves too.
Right. Making sure we're not the ones doing the manipulating.
Yeah. Right. And that's the really hard part, I think.
It is. It's a journey, you know?
Yeah.
It's about understanding yourself as much as it's about understanding other people.
Hmm.
And that's what's so cool about dark psychology, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It challenges you to be more mindful,
Right.
more compassionate,
Mm.
and just more authentic in everything you do.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Man, this has been really eye-opening.
I know, right?
It's a lot to take in, but it's so fascinating,
It is.
We've gone from, why people manipulate
Yeah.
to the actual techniques.
Mhm.
And now I guess the big question is, where do we go from here? What can our listeners actually do with this information?
That's a good question. I think the most important thing is knowledge is power,
Right.
right? The more you understand about this stuff, the better you'll be at spotting it when it happens.
Right.
And the better you'll be at protecting yourself.
It's like we were saying, we're building that mental toolkit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You start to see those patterns, those red flags,
Right.
and you can avoid those traps.
Yeah, and it's not just about being defensive either, right?
Right.
I mean, this awareness can help us build better relationships.
Absolutely.
Healthier, more honest relationships.
Yeah, because when you can recognize manipulation,
Right.
you can choose not to do it yourself.
Right. Right.
It's about being a better person, you know?
It's about raising our own awareness, not just of how other people treat us, but how we treat them.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's really powerful.
It is.
But this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, yeah, there's so much more to this whole world of dark psychology.
Like what? Give us a sneak peek. What else is out there?
Well, we talked about a few specific tactics today,
Right.
but there are so many others.
Hmm.
Like there's gaslighting,
Okay.
emotional blackmail.
Right.
There's even this thing called the dark triad.
Ooh, the dark triad.
Yeah, it's a group of personality traits: narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy.
Okay, now that sounds a little scary.
It can be, but it's also super fascinating.
Yeah, we'll have to do a whole deep dive on that.
I'd love to talk more about that with you.
Okay, we'll put that on the list.
But for now, I encourage everyone listening to keep learning about this stuff.
Yeah,
There are some great books out there, articles that go into way more detail.
we'll be sure to put some links in the show notes.
Perfect.
But before we go, any final words of wisdom for our listeners? Now that they're armed with all this knowledge about dark psychology.
Just remember, this isn't about being suspicious of everybody.
Here.
It's not about being cynical.
Right.
It's about being aware.
Mm.
It's about having the tools to understand people
Right.
and to make smart choices about your relationships.
Well said. Well said. So, I guess as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of dark psychology, we'll leave you with this: stay curious, stay informed,
Yes,
and most importantly, stay true to yourselves.
absolutely.
Until next time, happy diving, everybody!